Hello, I'm Miranda, and I've got a special Malifaux battle report for you folks. We're actually playing a 50 Soulstone game here. I've got Dylan. Dylan, what are you playing today?
I'm playing Hoffman, running a bunch of robots, and I'm with Guild.
With the Guild, yes. And Donald, what are you playing today?
I'm playing Jakob Lynch and his usual crew of drug-addicted misfits, and I'm running him as Neverborn.
As Neverborn. All right, well, let's see how this battle goes. For today's game, the strategy is Turf War. A marker is placed at the center of the table. At the end of each turn after the first, the crew earns 1 victory point if it has 2 or more non-peon models within 6 inches of the turf marker. Both Hoffman and Lynch select their schemes from a pool of 5. Lynch chooses bodyguard and plant evidence. Hoffman chooses the same schemes, bodyguard and plant evidence. The battle size is 50 soulstones. The Neverborn crew consists of 2 illuminated, 2 beckoners, Mr. Graves with 1 upgrade, Hungering Darkness with 2 upgrades, and Jakob Lynch with 3 upgrades. The Guild's crew consists of a Watcher, Peacekeeper, Guardian, Mechanical Attendant, Ryle with 1 upgrade, and C. Hoffman with 3 upgrades. Hoffman flips a 3 and Lynch flips a 13. Lynch, winning the initiative, chooses to deploy first. The deployment is standard. Both players deploy within 6 inches of the table edge. The board is set and the stakes are high. Starting turn 1. Hoffman wins the initiative flip with an 11. He chooses to let Lynch go first. Both sides draw their opening hand of 6 cards, and Lynch starts with a black joker in his hand. Mr. Graves activates and attempts to cast Show You the Door on the Beckoner, which is a cast 6, target 13. He succeeds, and the Beckoner moves 6 inches behind the cover of a tree. Mr. Graves then pushes in base contact with the Beckoner. He casts Keeping the Peace, which prevents charge actions within 6 inches of Graves without a will check. Ryle activates and uses a 0 action to push himself 4 inches, then walks another 4 toward the fence line. He discards a card to go into defensive stance. A Beckoner activates and casts Lure on Lynch, a cast 6, target 12. At first it fails, but she cheats in an 8 to succeed the cast. Lynch walks 4 inches toward the Beckoner. She then pushes up to 4 inches. With her last action, she attempts to lure Lynch again. The cast is successful and Lynch moves another 4 inches. Then the Beckoner pushes another 4 inches. The Watcher activates and does a double walk 12 inches forward behind the house. A second Beckoner activates, moves forward 6, and casts Lure on an Illuminated. It succeeds its target number of 12, and the Illuminated moves forward 5 inches. The Beckoner then pushes 4 inches forward. The Peacekeeper activates and double walks toward the stone wall. The next Illuminated double walks behind the church walls. It casts Brill Shaper, although it does not need to heal. Lynch is searching for aces in the deck. The Hunter double walks to the stone wall. C. Hoffman uses Magnetization to push into base contact with the model. The second Illuminated activates and double walks, then casts Brill Shaper, once again fishing for aces. The Guardian activates. It double walks and uses its 0 action, Protect, on the Hunter. The cast fails, but the Guardian cheats in a 7 to succeed. The Hungering Darkness activates. It double walks forward and attempts to cast Heed My Voice onto the Hunter. An opposed duel occurs. The Hunter flips a 12 and the Hungering Darkness gets an ace. The ace goes into Lynch's hand. Lynch cheats in an 11 to win the duel. He chooses to force the hunter to use the chain harpoon against the peacekeeper. The attack flip totals a 14 versus defense 15 and misses. The mechanical attendant double walks near the church wall. Lynch activates. He uses Wake Up with a Hand. Since he is activated last, he receives 2 additional cards into his hand. Lynch mulligans to discard 3 cards from his hand and draw 3 more. He then moves 4 inches behind the beckoner near the church and discards a card to gain defensive stance. C. Hoffman activates and uses Tap Power on the mechanical attendant to gain the fast condition. He then power loops with the guardian. C. Hoffman activates and uses his 0 action to place a scrap marker. He succeeds and a scrap marker is placed in base contact with the hunter. He attempts to place an upgrade onto the peacekeeper. It is a cast 8 target number 14. He flips a 4 and fails, but cheats in an 11 to succeed. He places patchwork plating onto the peacekeeper to give it additional armor. C. Hoffman casts Machine Puppet onto the peacekeeper, needing to hit a target number of 12. He flips a 6 and succeeds the cast. He uses Chain Harpoon on the Hungering Darkness. The Hungering Darkness is terrifying to all, so the peacekeeper must pass a horror duel. He fails at first, but Hoffman cheats in a 13 to succeed. The attack flip totals 12 versus defense 16, and fails to hit the Hungering Darkness. C. Hoffman casts Machine Puppet again on the peacekeeper and flips the Red Joker. He uses the suit to get the trigger to push the peacekeeper 2 inches toward the wall. He then attacks Hungering Darkness with the Chain Harpoon. The attack flip totals 13 versus defense 10. Hungering Darkness cheats to put his defense at 15. C. Hoffman casts Machine Puppet on the peacekeeper again, and then cheats to succeed the cast. Hungering Darkness uses a Soul Stone to gain defensive for the attack. The defender gets a bonus to his defense flip, and the attacker gets a negative to both his attack and damage flip. The attack fails. At the end of the round, the hunter uses Prowl to push up 3 inches toward the wall. I know you're excited to see what happens next, but first I want to tell you about an exciting new item I am producing on Kickstarter, a beautiful WarGamerGirl enamel pin. Check out the link in the video description below to see how you can get your hands on one of these fancy pins. The Kickstarter is only running for a few more days, so be sure to check it out. Alright, on to turn 2. Hoffman spends a Soul Stone to draw 2 more cards and discard back down to the hand limit. Lynch wins the initiative flip and goes first. Hungering Darkness activates. He uses Heed My Voice on the peacekeeper and succeeds the opposed duel with a 20 versus willpower defense of 12. He forces the peacekeeper to fire the Chain Harpoon at Ryle. The attack flip totals 7 versus defense 14. Lynch pulls the ace into his hand and then cheats up to a 15. Ryle cheats it up to a 17, winning the duel and defending the attack successfully. The Hungering Darkness attempts Heed My Voice again against the peacekeeper. The cast totals 8 versus willpower defense of 17. Lynch cheats face down with his ability. The peacekeeper calls the bluff and wins the duel. With his final action, the Hungering Darkness moves 6 inches toward the Illuminated. The peacekeeper activates and uses Chain Harpoon against the Hungering Darkness. The attack total is 14 versus defense 12. Lynch cheats a card face down. Peacekeeper does not cheat. This puts the defense total to 15, and the Hungering Darkness defends the attack. The peacekeeper fires Chain Harpoon again. The attack flip totals a 16 versus defense 14. He does not cheat. The damage flip is on a single negative since the attack only succeeded by 2. The Hungering Darkness takes a weak 2 damage, which is reduced to 1 since the Hungering Darkness is incorporeal. The Chain Harpoon pushes the Hungering Darkness 8 inches toward the peacekeeper and gains the slow condition. The Beckoner moves slightly to gain line of sight to the hunter. She casts Despicable Promises on the hunter and flips a total of 9 versus a willpower defense of 7. The hunter cheats in a 9 to bring his defense to 14 and is not affected. Ryle activates and charges at Hungering Darkness. He gains +2 to melee attacks. Before the duel, Hungering Darkness uses a Soul Stone to gain defensive for the attack. Ryle uses Hydraulic Fists and flips an attack total of 16 versus defense 16. The attack succeeds but is on a triple negative flip for damage. 4 cards are flipped, and the Hungering Darkness takes a weak 3 damage, reduced to 2 because of Incorporeal. Hungering Darkness then heals for 2 from Nexus of Power. Ryle attacks again. Once again, Hungering Darkness uses a Soul Stone for defense. Ryle's attack flip totals 11 versus defense 9. Lynch cheats face down. Ryle then cheats up to a 19, which would normally be a straight flip, but since a Soul Stone was used, Ryle is now on a single negative flip for damage. He flips a weak 3 damage, reduced to 2, and regained again through Nexus of Power. The second Beckoner activates and attempts to cast Lure on Hungering Darkness. The Beckoner flips an ace and puts it into Lynch's hand, then cheats in a 7 to meet the target number. The Hungering Darkness moves toward the Beckoner. Then the Beckoner pushes 4 inches toward the rock. She casts Despicable Promises onto the hunter. She misses the target number and cheats up to cast it. The attack flip totals 15 versus Willpower Defense 10. It's a negative flip for damage, causing a weak 1 wound, and the hunter gains Brilliance. The hunter activates and targets the Illuminated with Chain Harpoon. Since the Illuminated has not activated yet, the hunter gets a positive flip to the attack from X. With the positive flip, the attack total is 17 versus defense 13. He flips a single negative and causes a weak 2 damage, reduced to 1 because of armor. The Illuminated is then dragged toward the hunter and gains the slow condition. The hunter then makes a melee attack against the Illuminated. The attack flip totals a 17 versus defense 18. The hunter loses the duel. The Illuminated activates and heals 1 wound. He targets the hunter with Hardened Brilliance. Since the hunter has Brilliance, the attack will deal +2 damage if it succeeds. The hunter still has defensive +2 from the Guardian, and the Illuminated has line of sight to the Hungering Darkness and gains a positive flip to damage. The Illuminated attack total is 12 versus defense 5 since the hunter flipped the Black Joker. It's a positive flip for damage, causing moderate 6 wounds, which is reduced to 5 because of armor. C. Hoffman activates and gives the mechanical attendant slow to give himself the fast condition. This gives him an additional AP for this turn. He uses his 0 action to place a scrap marker in base contact with the hunter. Hoffman then uses Improvised Repairs to consume the scrap marker and heal friendly constructs within 3 inches. He flips a weak heal of 1, then cheats up to a moderate 2 wounds. C. Hoffman then uses Machine Puppet onto the hunter and succeeds the cast. He makes the hunter use Steel Claws on the Illuminated. The attack flip totals 10 versus defense 15 and fails. Hoffman casts Machine Puppet again to make the hunter attack and succeeds. The attack flip totals 16 versus defense 15. It's a negative flip for damage, and the Illuminated takes a moderate 4 damage. Hoffman casts Machine Puppet again and succeeds to make the hunter use Steel Claws again. The duel fails. Mr. Graves activates and charges at the hunter. The attack flip totals 18 versus defense 16. The hunter does not cheat. It's a negative flip for damage, causing a weak 3 damage to the hunter. Graves attacks again, and the total is 8 versus defense 19, so he misses. Mr. Graves then uses his 0 action, Keeping the Peace, to force the enemy to make a will check before declaring a charge. He flips the Red Joker and succeeds the cast. The Guardian activates and attempts to cast Defensive +2 on the hunter with his 0 action. He succeeds the cast and gets a trigger to heal the hunter 2 points. The Guardian charges the Illuminated and must pass a will check because of Mr. Graves. The Guardian is power looped with Hoffman, granting him the same willpower as his master. The willpower check fails, but he cheats to succeed the target number of 13. The Guardian has a 3-inch melee range and stays just outside the 2-inch range of Mr. Graves. He uses his flat blade on the Illuminated, and the attack flip totals 18 versus defense 6. Lynch cheats face down, the Guardian calls the bluff and wins. It's a positive flip for damage, causing a moderate 3 damage, reduced to 2 by armor. He attacks again, and the attack flip totals 15 versus defense 17. The Guardian does not cheat and fails the duel. An Illuminated moves forward toward the church and lays a scheme marker in contact with the church. The Illuminated uses its zero-action Brill Shaper and flips the Black Joker, failing to cast. The Mechanical Attendant activates and moves toward the Peacekeeper. At the end of his walk, Hoffman moves into base contact. Jakob Lynch wakes up with a hand and draws 2 cards. He then uses Mulligan and discards 2 cards to draw 2 more. He walks forward in front of the Hungering Darkness and takes a shoot action against Ryle. The attack flip totals 9 versus defense of 16. Lynch cheats a card face down. The guild player calls the bluff and does not cheat back. The attack total is now 17 and succeeds. Lynch discards a card to choose the trigger on his holdout pistol, and picks the loud blank trigger to give the slow condition. He flips a weak 2 damage, reduced to 1 by armor, and Ryle gains slow. Lynch uses his last action to seek safety behind the Hungering Darkness. The Watcher activates. It walks behind the building and drops a scheme token in base contact with the building. Since both players had 2 non-peon models within 6 inches of the turf marker, they gain 1 victory point each. I hope you're enjoying the game so far. Please make sure to like this video by giving it a thumbs up. Now for turn 3. At the start of round 3, both players spend a soul stone to draw 2 additional cards and discard back down to 6. The Neverborn crew wins initiative and activates an Illuminated. He heals 1 wound at the start of his turn and casts the zero-action Brill Shaper. The cast succeeds and he flips a weak heal, which he then cheats up to a moderate heal for 2. The Illuminated swings at the Hunter. The attack is a 10 versus 9 defense. The Hunter cheats the defense up to 15. The Illuminated cheats up to a 16, winning the duel. The damage is on a single negative and deals a moderate 4 damage, which boxes the Hunter, killing it. A scrap marker is placed where the Hunter was. With his second AP, the Illuminated jumps the wall. The Peacekeeper activates and goes into a flurry of attacks, targeting the Illuminated. It discards a card and gets to make 3 melee attacks. The Peacekeeper flips a 15 versus defense of 13. Lynch cheats face down, and the Peacekeeper responds by cheating it up to a 16. The damage is a straight flip with 2 ram triggers, giving it an additional damage each. It deals moderate damage plus 2 for 6 damage, killing the Illuminated. A Beckoner activates and attempts to cast Despicable Promises onto the Peacekeeper. She has to pass a terrifying Living 12 check. The check fails, but Lynch cheats it up to succeed. She then flips an 18 on the attack versus defense 18. The Peacekeeper cheats in a red Joker to defend against the attack. The Beckoner then uses Lure against the Peacekeeper. The cast fails. Ryle activates and is slow. He generates only 1 AP this turn and uses his modified Steam Gatling gun against the Beckoner. The attack gains a bonus to the attack flip. Ryle flips an attack total of 13 versus defense 4. The damage is a straight flip and causes weak damage. Ryle cheats it up to a moderate 3 damage. He then uses the trigger to make another Gatling gun attack for free against another target. He targets Mr. Graves. Since Graves is engaged with the Guardian, the shot is randomized. Ryle flips for each engaged model, and the lowest value is who is attacked. This ends up being Mr. Graves. Ryle flips an attack total of 17 versus defense 10. Lynch cheats face down. The attack still succeeds and gains a positive flip with the declared trigger. It deals severe damage for 4, which is reduced to 3. Black blood triggers on Graves, causing models within 1 inch to take 1 damage. Hungering Darkness takes 1 damage. With his zero action, Ryle uses Memory Stirs to consume a scrap marker to gain 1 additional willpower. The second Beckoner activates. She walks out to gain line of sight to Ryle and attempts to cast Lure on him. She has a positive and pulls the ace into Lynch's hand. The Beckoner succeeds the cast with an 18 versus defense 17. Ryle is forced to make a walk action toward the Beckoner. The Beckoner then pushes into the zone. The Guardian casts Protect onto Ryle, giving him defensive +2. The Guardian attacks Mr. Graves. He flips a 19 total attack versus defense 16. Lynch does not cheat. It's a negative flip for damage, causing a weak 1 wound to Mr. Graves. Black blood triggers, dealing another damage to the Hungering Darkness. The Guardian attacks again and flips an attack total of 13 versus defense 12. Lynch does not cheat. The Guardian uses the trigger that negates armor. It's a negative flip for damage, and Mr. Graves takes 1 wound. Black blood triggers, damaging the Hungering Darkness for 1, but he spends a Soul Stone to reduce damage taken to 0. Since a Soul Stone was spent, the Hungering Darkness uses his ability to heal for 2. Mr. Graves retaliates and attacks Ryle. The attack flip totals 16 versus defense 15. Ryle gains a defensive trigger to gain an additional +2 armor for the attack. However, Mr. Graves ignores armor and declares a trigger to gain a bonus to the damage flip. It's a straight flip for damage, causing a moderate 4 wounds to Ryle. He swings again and flips an attack total of 15 versus defense 17. Lynch does not cheat. He then uses his zero action to cast Keeping the Peace, needing a 10 total, and succeeds. C. Hoffman activates and applies the slow condition to the mechanical attendant to gain the fast condition on himself. He then power loops with the Guardian. Hoffman uses his zero action to place a scrap marker in base contact with Ryle. Hoffman then uses an AP to consume the scrap marker and heal Ryle. He flips a moderate heal of 2. Hoffman casts Machine Puppet and succeeds, making Ryle use Machine Fist against Mr. Graves. The attack total is 8 versus defense 15. Hoffman does not cheat and makes the same action. He targets Ryle with Machine Puppet and succeeds, then uses Machine Fist again. The attack and defense both total 15. Graves does not want to cheat, and Ryle has a double negative flip, resulting in a weak 3 damage, reduced to 2 by armor. Black blood triggers and damages Hungering Darkness for 1. Hoffman uses his last AP to cast Machine Puppet again and succeeds. Ryle's attack total is 17 versus defense 15. It's a negative flip for damage and causes a severe 7 wounds. Mr. Graves is hard to kill, so he is only reduced to 1 wound. Black blood triggers and damages Hungering Darkness, who then spends his last Soul Stone for damage prevention. He prevents the damage and heals once more for 2. The Hungering Darkness activates and generates only 1 AP because of the slow condition. It moves behind a rock and casts Heed My Voice onto Ryle. The cast total is 20 versus willpower defensive 8. He forces Ryle to use the Gatling gun against the Guardian. The attack flip totals 15 versus defense 8. The Guardian cheats it up to a 14 and gets a defensive trigger to gain 2 additional armor. It's a negative flip for damage, but Ryle has the concentrated fire trigger to make it a straight flip. The attack does a weak 2 damage, but is reduced to 1 by armor. The Watcher activates and moves 6 inches toward the next building and drops another scheme marker. An illuminated double walks to the cover of a tree. He then casts Brill Shaper in an attempt to look for additional aces for Jakob Lynch. The mechanical attendant moves from the cover of one of the constructs. At the end of his movement, C. Hoffman magnetizes into base contact with it. Jakob Lynch wakes up with a hand and draws 2 additional cards. He then mulligans and discards 3 cards to draw 3 new cards. Lynch then attempts to cast Play for Blood against Ryle. The attack flip totals 21 versus willpower defense of 8. Ryle takes 2 damage, which is reduced to 1 by armor and gains the Brilliance condition. Lynch casts Play for Blood again against Ryle. The attack flip totals 13 versus willpower defense of 10. Ryle takes 2 damage, reduced to 1 by armor again. With his last AP, Lynch uses Final Debt against Ryle. The attack flip totals 12 versus defense 17. Lynch cheats in the Red Joker to succeed on the attack. Final Debt deals damage equal to the cards in Lynch's hand. Ryle spends a Soul Stone to prevent damage. The prevention flip is severe, preventing 3 damage, and he steps away unscathed from the attack. Both players have at least 2 non-peon models in the Turf War zone and gain 1 victory point each. So far, the game is tied. This seems like a great time to ask that you subscribe to my channel and follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I'll wait. Alright, now that you've done that, let's start turn 4. Hoffman uses his final Soul Stone to draw and discard back to a normal hand size. Hoffman loses initiative again to Lynch. Mr. Graves activates and makes a melee attack against Ryle. Ryle has +2 to defense. Graves flips an attack total of 16 versus defense 13. Ryle cheats it up to a 16, causing a double negative damage flip. This causes a weak 3 damage that ignores armor. Graves makes another melee attack. The attack flip totals 18 versus defense 17. And Mr. Graves triggers Crushing Strike, bringing the damage up to a straight flip of severe damage. Ryle dies and a scrap marker is placed in base contact with his model. Graves then uses the 0 action, keeping the piece, to prevent charges within 6 inches. It goes off successfully. The Guardian attacks Mr. Graves with his flat blade. The attack flip totals an 8 versus defense 16. The Guardian cheats it up to a 19. The attack has a single negative flip and deals moderate 3 damage, enough to kill Mr. Graves. The Guardian then uses Protect on the Peacekeeper, but fails. The Guardian cheats it up to succeed. With his final AP, the model moves up to the wall. A Beckoner casts Despicable Promises on the Peacekeeper. Since the Peacekeeper is terrifying, a horror check is needed. The Beckoner initially fails the horror check, but cheats it up to succeed. The cast flips a total of 15 versus a willpower defense of 17, and fails. The Beckoner then moves into the zone behind the cover of a rock. The Peacekeeper activates and fires a chain harpoon at the Beckoner. The attack flip totals 13 versus defense 11. Lynch cheats in face down, but fails to defend. The damage flip is a single negative, dealing a weak 2 damage. The Beckoner is then dragged 8 inches towards the Peacekeeper and gains the slow condition. The Peacekeeper makes a melee attack on the Beckoner. The attack flip totals 18 versus defense 14. It's a negative flip for damage, and the Beckoner takes a moderate 5 damage, which kills her. The second Beckoner activates and attempts to cast Despicable Promises on the Guardian. The cast fails, but is cheated up to a 14 versus defense 13. The Beckoner gains a bonus for having line of sight to Hungering Darkness, and the attack goes to a straight flip. It deals moderate damage for 3 that is reduced to 2 by armor, and the Peacekeeper gains the Brilliance condition. The Beckoner then uses Lore on the Guardian. The cast succeeds with a total of 12. The Guardian flips the Black Joker and cannot cheat. The Guardian is forced to make a walk action toward the Beckoner. C. Hoffman activates and consumes the scrap marker to repair the Guardian, who heals for 2. Hoffman then gives the slow condition to the mechanical attendant to gain the fast condition for himself. He power loops with the Peacekeeper, then targets the Peacekeeper with Machine Puppet to make an attack against Lynch. The cast succeeds, and the melee attack totals 10 versus defense 14, so it fails. Hoffman casts Machine Puppet again and fails, but he cheats in to succeed on the cast. The Peacekeeper's attack flips the Red Joker for a total of 20 versus defense 18. This causes a negative flip for a weak 2 damage on Lynch, who also gains the slow condition. C. Hoffman uses his final AP to use Machine Puppet on the Guardian to make him move. The cast succeeds. The Guardian is free to move back over the wall and does not have to disengage because the Beckoner has no melee attack. Hoffman then uses a 0 action to place a scrap marker in base contact with the Guardian. An Illuminated activates and lays a scheme marker on the tree. He then walks toward the church. The Illuminated does his 0 action Brill Shaper again to search for aces for Lynch. The Mechanical Attendant activates and attempts to shoot at the Beckoner. The attack flips a total of 15 versus defense 11. The Beckoner does not cheat. The damage has a negative flip, causing a weak 1 damage. The Hungering Darkness moves from behind the rock and targets the Guardian with Heed My Voice. Since the Guardian has the Brilliance condition, the attacker gains a bonus flip. The attack total is 14 versus Willpower Defense 11. The Guardian is forced to move back over the wall. The Hungering Darkness then moves back into cover. The Watcher activates and flies to a fence, then drops another scheme marker. Lynch activates and wakes up with a hand, and mulligans, discarding 3 cards and drawing 3 more cards. Since he has the slow condition, he only gains 2 AP for this turn. Lynch shoots at the Guardian and flips an attack total of 12 versus defense 10. Lynch declares a trigger on the attack to give the Guardian slow. The Guardian has a defensive trigger, putting him at armor plus 3. The attack does a weak 2 damage, which is reduced to 1. With his last AP, he walks into the Turf War zone. Both Lynch and Hoffman choose to reveal one of their schemes. Lynch took Bodyguard for the Hungering Darkness, and Hoffman also took Bodyguard for the Peacekeeper. At the end of the round, each player scores 1 victory point for the Bodyguard scheme being revealed. They also each score a victory point for having 2 non-peon models in the Turf War zone. And we are still tied! Tell me, who do you think is gonna win? Make sure to post your thoughts in the comments section. And now for turn 5. Both players are out of soul stones and cannot change their hands. C. Hoffman wins the initiative flip. The Guardian activates and moves toward the Beckoner and Lynch. He makes an attack with his flat blade against the Beckoner. The attack flip totals 15 versus defense 10. Lynch cheats face down. The Guardian cheats the attack up to an 18 versus defense 16. The attack is on a single negative and deals a moderate 3 damage to the Beckoner. Hungering Darkness advances into the center zone, then casts Heed My Voice on the Peacekeeper. The attack flip totals 14 versus a willpower defense of 15. Lynch cheats face down. The Peacekeeper cheats it up to 16, but loses to an 18 on the attack. The Peacekeeper makes a walk action, putting him out of the Turf War zone. With his last AP, the Hungering Darkness makes a melee attack against the Guardian. The attack flip totals a 16 versus defense 17. Lynch cheats face down. The Guardian cheats up to a 19 defense. Then Lynch reveals the Red Joker, putting the attack up to 21. Lynch declares the trigger Envelop, boosting the damage track. The damage is on a single negative flip. dealing moderate 5 damage, reduced to 4 by armor. C. Hoffman activates to give the mechanical attendant slow to gain the fast condition for himself, and power loops with the Peacekeeper. He targets the Peacekeeper with Machine Puppet and succeeds the cast, making the Peacekeeper walk back into the turf war zone. Hoffman uses Machine Puppet again and succeeds the cast. He declares a trigger causing the Peacekeeper to take 2 unreducible damage to gain fast. He then makes the Peacekeeper walk over the wall. Hoffman uses his zero action to place a scrap marker in base contact with the Peacekeeper. Hoffman consumes the scrap marker to heal within 3 inches, and heals both the Guardian and the Peacekeeper for 2. The Beckoner casts Lure on the Hungering Darkness. It succeeds and declares the Not That Kind of Girl trigger. The Hungering Darkness moves and the Beckoner gets to push 4 inches. She then casts Despicable Promises on the Peacekeeper. She fails the terror check against the Peacekeeper, but cheats up to succeed. The attack flip totals 14 to willpower defense of 9. Damage is a single negative flip, causing a weak 1 damage to the Peacekeeper, who gains the Brilliance condition. The Peacekeeper activates. Since it has the fast condition, the Peacekeeper gets 3 AP. The Peacekeeper declares a charge attack against the Hungering Darkness and passes the terror check. It moves forward and makes its first attack. The attack flip totals 8 versus defense 14. The Peacekeeper cheats up to a 15. The damage is on a single negative for a weak 4 damage, which is reduced to 2 by Incorporeal. Peacekeeper attacks again, flipping a total of 8 versus 15. The Peacekeeper cheats in the Red Joker and declares the Critical Strike trigger. The damage flip does a moderate 6 damage, which is reduced to 3 by Incorporeal. The last attack flips a total of 8 versus defense 5. Lynch cheats face down. Peacekeeper cheats up to a 9, and Hungering Darkness fails to defend. The damage is a single negative that deals a weak 3 damage, killing the Hungering Darkness. The Illuminated charges the mechanical attendant. The attack flips a total of 16 versus defense 15. Damage is a single negative, dealing a weak 2 damage. Lynch pulls the ace into his hand. The second attack flip totals 13 versus defense 13. The damage is a double negative, dealing a weak 2 damage and killing the mechanical attendant. A scrap marker is placed near his corpse. The Illuminated uses Brill Shaper to search for aces again. The Watcher activates and shoots at the Beckoner. Since the Beckoner is engaged, the attack is randomized. The lowest card is the target, and it targets the Beckoner successfully. The attack flip totals a 19 versus defense 11. The Watcher declares a trigger, allowing him to look at the top card of either Fate deck and either leave it on top or put it at the bottom of the deck. The damage is a straight flip and deals a weak 0 damage. The Watcher chooses to look at Lynch's Fate deck and buries the 13 that was on top. The Watcher shoots again and randomizes into the engagement. It attacks the Beckoner again. The attack flip totals an 18 versus defense 12. The damage is a straight flip and deals weak damage for 0. Lynch activates and wakes up with a hand, then mulligans. Lynch casts Final Debt against the Peacekeeper. He performs a horror duel and fails, then cheats up to succeed. The cast fails to meet the target number. Lynch declines to cheat up. Lynch uses his holdout pistol as a melee weapon. The attack flip totals 16 versus defense 12. Lynch discards a card to get the trigger to deal +2 damage. The damage is on a single negative, but the Peacekeeper is hard to wound, putting it at a double negative. The attack deals a weak 4 damage, reduced to 1 by armor. Lynch uses holdout pistol again, and the attack flip totals 9 versus defense 13. Lynch cheats up to an 18. Lynch also declares the trigger to deal +2 damage. The damage is a double negative, dealing a weak 4 damage, which is reduced to 1 by armor. The round ends and Hoffman gains 1 victory point for keeping the Peacekeeper alive for the bodyguard scheme. Lynch loses out on a victory point for losing the Hungering Darkness. The score is 5 for Neverborn and 6 for Guild. They flip to see if the game continues, and it does not. The game ends. Both the Guild and the Resurrectionists gain 3 victory points for the Plant Evidence scheme markers. Hoffman gains 1 more victory point for keeping the Peacekeeper alive for bodyguard. The Guild is on a total of 10 versus 8. This results in a Guild victory. It was really hard to see what was coming until the end, and even then it was close. If you're curious to hear the players' thoughts on the match, click down below for a link to the after battle discussion where we dig into the game a little more. Thanks for watching.